Okay, the skeletal system lecture is a series of 4 parts, and in part 1, we're going to discuss cartilage and bone tissue. Just the basics. I know you have an embryology class, and Dr. Kumar will go into much greater detail. All right, first we're going to discuss cartilage. And cartilage is just one of several connective tissues. Connective tissue is one of 4. Okay, so you have 4 types of tissue in the body. They're nervous, muscular, connective, and epithelial. And epithelial lines stuff, and connective tissue connects stuff, and muscle tissue moves stuff, and nerves kind of control stuff. So of the connective tissues, you have blood and fat and bone and cartilage and tendons and ligaments. And we're going to look at cartilage and bone. So, back to cartilage. Cartilage is a resilient, semi-rigid form of connective tissue. It forms parts of the skeleton where flexibility is required. Now, flexibility is not only for movement, it also works for shock absorption, and it's going to allow for growth. Okay, so by flexibility, we mean a little more movement or potential movement than bone is going to give us. All right, cartilage is avascular. That means blood vessels don't enter cartilage. So it has to obtain different oxygens and nutrients and get rid of waste and CO2 by diffusion. Other connective tissues like fat and bone and tendons and ligaments get a much greater blood supply. As a matter of fact, blood is a connective tissue. So cartilage is unique as a connective tissue because it is avascular. Now, the proportion of bone to cartilage changes as we grow older. So as the body ages and changes and grows, as you're younger, you have a lot more cartilage. Bones of newborns are very soft and very flexible because they're mostly cartilage. As you age, you're going to replace a lot of this cartilage with bone, and you may even wear some of it down. So like cartilage in the ribs can harden and you can lose joint surface cartilage. So we're going to look at those. First, I want to list 3 basic types of cartilage. The first of these is called hyaline, and it is a smooth, glossy type of cartilage. It's the most abundant form of cartilage in the body. The second kind of cartilage is called fibrocartilage. Now, you want to be careful here because it's not fibrous connective tissue. It is a cartilage. It just has really thick bands of elastin and fibrin proteins that makes it look rougher, and it's stronger, and it's the second most common form of cartilage. And then the third kind of cartilage is called, if I can get a pencil, elastic cartilage, and it's the least common form. As a matter of fact, we only see that in the external ear and the external nose. So if you think about those, they need to be really flexible and mobile. So getting back to the examples I have over here on this side, on the left side, costal cartilage is hyaline cartilage. It attaches the ribs to the sternum, and it's going to allow flexibility so you can inhale and exhale. It also allows the ribs to move along with the vertebral column when you either flex the trunk or extend the trunk. So you bend forward or bend backward. Costal cartilage is actually the cartilage left over from forming the ribs. So a large part of our skeleton is made out of hyaline cartilage. That means as you get older, you can continue turning that cartilage into bone, which takes us back to here, how you lose cartilage as you age, and it can become harder and harder to breathe. So when we discuss the rib cage, we'll bring this point up again. The next kind of specific cartilage is the articular cartilage, which is again hyaline cartilage. And this covers all the articulating or joint surfaces in synovial joints. And these are the weight-bearing surfaces. And in a synovial joint is going to be the joints between bones of your fingers and your wrist and your elbow and your shoulder. So between the vertebrae, these are going to be joints that move a lot. So they need to have a padded, smooth surface, and that's why we use hyaline. So as I said, they provide a smooth, low friction, gliding surface so we can move them freely. All right, now again, elastic cartilage is only found in the ear and the nose, and fibrocartilage is going to be seen in what are called symphyses. So I'm just going to bring this, down here. So important just for you to know, your intervertebral disc, very important to chiropractors, is made of fibrocartilage. You're also going to see parts like your pubic symphysis. And in a week or two, when we talk about joints, we'll review what kind of joints are made out of cartilage. Now, by comparison, bone is another connective tissue. Just like all other connective tissues, instead of being cells packed tightly together like you see in epithelial or muscle tissue, these are cells that are spread out with a lot of what is called interstitial matrix in between it. So it's kind of like farmlands out in the Midwest where you have several miles in between farmhouses. Now, bone is highly specialized and it is living. With what we see in the lab is dried up and the cells are gone, but living tissue has cells in it and water. So there are cells and water and blood supply and a little bit of nerves and all that stuff. It is a hard form of connective tissue, although it does have some flexibility, and we'll talk about that. Bone makes up the majority of the skeleton in the adult. So we'll talk about when all that forms. Bone is covered by a tissue membrane called the periosteum, which literally means I'm around the bone. So is I am or that which, oste is bone, and peri is around. This is a fibrous connective tissue, and it's going to provide nourishment to the external part of the skeletal tissue. So the cells closest to the outside. And we'll talk in another section on how the cells closer or deeper are going to get it. The periosteum has cells that make it capable of laying down more bone, so included in growth and in the healing of fractures. But I'll put your growth there. It provides an interface for the attachment of tendons and ligaments, so muscles and ligaments that hang together don't actually attach to the bone, they attach to the periosteum covering it. And the last part I want to point out here is that the periosteum has the nerves that feel for the bone. So when you find that coffee table in the middle of the night with your shin, you're not actually having the bone respond, it's the periosteum that's sending a pain signal. And by doing that on the outside of the bone, it helps prevent damage to the actual bone. Now, adult bones are going to have several provisions they give. These are the functions of the skeletal system. So adult bones, and children's bones too, but these are modifying. We're talking about the adult. It supports the body and its vital cavities. This is the primary supporting tissue for the body. So this not only protects your organs, but it carries your weight. So we see protection of vital organs and structures. It has a mechanical basis for movement. It's called leverage. So the combination of joints and muscle attachments and ligaments holding it together are going to provide the movement we see in the body, or the lack of movement. We store salts, primarily calcium, in the bones. So we store it there, we release it when we need more of it, and when we have too much, we store it back. This is the term called homeostasis, which means the process of keeping the same the same. I know it sounds stupid, but stasis is the process of keeping, and homeo means same. So, process of keeping the same the same. We now call this homeodynamics because we'll talk about this next week. It's really not a set level. You're going to find that you constantly go up and down and you're trying to reach this happy medium or range. And since it's always moving, you may see the term homeodynamics instead of homeostasis. Now, bone is responsible for producing new red blood cells, new white blood cells, and new platelets. So all of your blood cells are made by the red bone marrow that's housed inside your bones. And this process is called hematopoiesis. Again, the SIS means process of, poe is to make, and hemat means blood. The final neat little function that your bones provide is the storage of fats. How wonderful. Isn't that great? Storage of fat in the body, by the way, is limitless. So I always liked my bones until I found that I can't trust them anymore. Okay, staying on topic. You also have a yellow bone marrow found in the bone. And as you age, yellow bone marrow replaces red bone marrow. So we'll talk about that with histology. And in this yellow bone marrow, you store triglycerides or fats for energy. So when you need them, you can release this, and when you don't need it, you store it. And it does make for a limited supply. So within the bone, you only have so much space, but you are storing fat. Completely fat-free diets, by the way, are bad for you because your body needs fat. And we'll talk about that again in another lecture. And I just want to make these a little different real quick. So protection of vital structures is a separate one, and mechanical basis for movement is a separate one, and storage of salts, so the visual learners can tell them apart.